Okay. How's that? Is that no? Okay. Keep working on this. There's no sound. Nothing. Oh, yeah. What's wrong with this? Green light's on, but there's no sound. No. Moving stuff around here. Sometimes I run out of my technical skills.
Yeah, it is.
That doesn't seem.
I think it's working, but it's not coming out of the speaker.
Hello, hello.
Working.
It's working. Speaker. I
Yeah.
think that means it's not working, but. Well, what about this other one? And then what about the people here? Okay. I'll just speak louder to the group here. Is that okay? So I should keep this in my. Okay. So now the question is, can you all hear me? You can all come closer if you want. Okay. To the text. Sorry about last week. I unexpectedly caught something that was not healthy enough to come here. So sorry if some of you didn't get the message. Came in. You never come in vain to the monastery, I must say. Even if there's nobody here, nothing going on, it's still a wonderful place to come to. Okay, continuing again with this really important passage of text, I'm looking at page 21, 22 of your collection. And again, just to catch us up a little bit, this is a series of 10 questions being put by Manjushri to various bodhisattvas in the assembly, asking them about the essentials of practice, and specifically why there's such a difference between living beings, particularly people who come to the teachings, hear the teachings, are exposed to the teachings, even start to practice the teachings, and yet there's such an uneven fruition from their labors. And it seems even to someone among us to be looking at some people don't seem to practice very much at all and have obtained wonderful insights and liberations and understandings. And then there's people that really practice hard and don't seem to be able to start even the beginning of a fire in their wisdom light. Why is this? This particular passage, and the previous one I think was about the bodhisattvas explaining, because even though they get the teachings, even though they're exposed to them, they're lax, they're lazy, they don't pick it up and they don't practice it. So it's just as if not having it at all. In this particular section, he's asking why, and we're looking at here, let's see, he says, 佛子如佛所说，若有众生受持正法, basically asking, and then ends with, 习能出断一切烦恼. So he's basically asking, any sentient being who can hear, listen to, study, even memorize this proper Dharma can be rid of all afflictions. And this is the most important element here, because these afflictions are at the heart of awakening or confusion. There's no question in the teachings that dealing with the afflictions, the klesha, the phanau, is everything. It's really what it's all about. And so it's a very active, dynamic teaching. And dealing with the afflictions doesn't simply mean understanding them, analyzing them, or even putting them into nice, what do we call these? Spreadsheets. I have students who like to do spreadsheets. So they create all these spreadsheets with the various afflictions and the cause and whatnot, but it's still in the spreadsheet. It's not spread to the heart. And without spreading to the heart, there's no transformation. So the Bodhisattva here, who I believe is virtuous leader, Dharma leader is the one that's being addressed here. And the first response is what I want to deal with tonight. If you look on, that would be the bottom of page 21. It says, and read it together in the Chinese, sure, meaning then, that time. It's just the character for time. Fa Shuo Pusa, so Dharma leader. Yi Song Da Yue, and then his response. Bo Zi Shan Di Ting Suo Wen Ru Shi Yi. Fei Dan Yi Duo Wen Neng Ru Lai Lai Fa. So his answer is, listen well, I'm going to give you the true meaning of what you're asking about. And then these key lines, not merely by means of much learning may one enter the thus come one's teaching. Two things I said last time I was here, we could, and I think it's good to do, go over some of the phanau, the afflictions, just to be more clear about what they are. It's used constantly if you're coming to the ceremonies or the repentances, or often just the daily recitation, you'll see the phanau listed there. And people recite it every day, but never really take it apart and go into detail of what it is very closely. It's one of the second, I believe, of the Bodhisattva vows, right? Living beings are boundless. I vow to eliminate them all. Afflictions, phanau, are endless. I vow to transform them, get rid of them, eliminate them. How to do that? Through the Dharma doors. I vow to study them all with the hope that I'll attain the way and then return to teach and transform living beings. So it's a secular vow element that's going on here, but you need all four elements. But the second part, the afflictions are endless, seemingly is referring to the afflictions of living beings. But it's very clear from the text that it's referring to one's own. And without eliminating one's own afflictions, forget about teaching. It's just like going to a sick doctor who's dropped out of medical school. Okay, you're going to get mistreated because the first business hasn't been taken care of. Physician, heal thyself. So I'm going to go over just what are called the six fundamental tonight, kind of gloss through them a little bit. Basically, you all familiar with the 12 chain link, the 12 links of condition co-arising, this pratita samyutpada? Basically, it's describing the process by which from the first initial movements of the mind, how we give rise from that lack of clarity called avidya, ignorance, which then leads to actions, which basically then leads to karmic results, and that leads to the whole chain of being as it plays out. It's sort of a cyclical description of a self-constructed prison of consciousness and being that we're held to. So it's describing conditioned existence, and this is describing basically what's called samsara, the turning around and around in this sort of prison. It's almost like a what do they call it, loop, tape loop? Tape loop you can use. It's also, you could use it in terms of language of prison recidivism. So we go, we do our sentence and whatnot, but because the basic causes haven't been addressed and eliminated, we have a return, and we have a return. So samsara means just returning, going on and on and on. You don't have to get into it from life to life, although that's what it's talking about, but you can get into it from day to day. The cyclical patterns that we lock ourselves into, starting with this basic ignorance. So this 12-chain link is really an important one to go into, and we will later in the text probably go into detail there. It can be broken down to basically the delusion, the karma that's created from that delusion. In other words, go into it tonight a little bit, it's called ignorance, but it's avidya. It means really not seeing things clearly, misperceiving. And from that, actions are created. Cetana, intentional actions, are created with body, speech, and mind, which basically then play out into retributions and results. And this is then at the root of dukkha, of the first truth of conditioned existence, is that it's unsatisfactory. So the klesha here is basically twofold. It's in the ignorance and the craving. And we're going to go into that because these are two of the 6 fundamental afflictions. The ignorance, avidya, and the craving, tana, or can be traced as trishna. And then Buddhaghosa, a really interesting early scholar monk, said this wheel of becoming, and becoming means there's no end to it. It's a wheel that keeps turning. Even at the point it says there's sickness, dying, and death, but death is not a terminal closure of this. It's merely one step in the process that then turns back and becomes again and again and again. So in a silly kind of way, just as your day ends with sleep and you think it's all over, morning becomes around again, and there's more becoming. But what he's doing is he's doing it this way. It's not a linear thing. It's just a wheel spinning. And he says this wheel of becoming should be understood to spin, revolving again and again, endlessly, seemingly endlessly. For the conditions are not cut off as long as the round of defilements is not cut off. So here's the key. The key to getting out of this involuntary, habitual, to a voluntary liberation, which is nirvana. The key to getting out of that is basically ending the afflictions. So on one hand, it's very direct and simple. On the other hand, as you see, we go into these are the deepest missteps, attachments, character flaws built into the human condition. I don't have them, but other people I notice do. That's one of them, by the way. I don't have it. Others are messed up and not me. Which one is that? What is it? Huh? Oh, it's stupid. Well, that's true. It's actually called arrogance, which is a form of stupidity. Basically, all of these are, but let's go. Okay, so the 6 fundamental. Anybody know what they are? Just off the top, and then we'll break them down. Here we go. List time, spreadsheets. And when we were training with Master Hua, he would go through these in a class with us, and we would take extensive notes on this, and we were expected to know these. And not only did we have to speak interestingly and speak well, but we had to deliver the fundamentals, and that consisted of these psychodynamic list of the human mind motion spectrum, okay? And so it wasn't just like be good or don't be bad. That was okay, but it was more important to actually go in. And I mean, actually what you're doing is, it's kind of like a bit of a spiritual medical school. You're actually learning the diagnostic categories that ail human beings. Not necessarily like the viruses and bacteria or the anatomical ailments and whatnot, but you're learning the spiritual anatomy, the spiritual diagnostic manual of what goes on with human beings get afflictions. And then after you know that, you can correctly diagnose and provide the antidote. But if you can't diagnose it, if you can't nail it down and call it out, it just seems like a syndrome with a vague no causality to it at all. But it's not a syndrome. There's an etiology here. There's a specific causation. Okay, anyone know the pa? This would be the 6. In the meantime, while I was talking, someone could look at their little phone and Google it. Google Bodhisattva. A little louder. Greed, anger or hatred, delusion or ignorance, that's 4. 3. Pride, doubt, and finally, wrong views. Diti, dristi, very important. Okay, so let's just go a little bit into the first one. The greed one is called, different names it goes by. Raga is one, R-A-G-A, if you're interested in getting the technical terms. This is referring to basically lust, craving, and a corresponding attachment, the wanting, this kind of wanting to get. So greed, raha, also comes graha, to grab, to grasp, is coming from, it's an intense and selfish desire. Intense and selfish desire. It's not a humanitarian desire, like I have a strong desire for world peace. That's not greed, okay? It's an intense selfish desire for me. And for some sensory object. So it has a specific focus. It's not just a kind of a vague sense, I just want more all the time. But actually it's very specific. It goes towards a sensory object. In Sanskrit, interesting, raga comes across as, anybody? Color or hue, H-U-E, because it's said to be like a blemish of a personal impurity or fundamental character affliction. So it's considered as a defective blemish, discoloration. It's also one of the 3 poisons. It's represented as one of the 3 poisons, and also one of the 3 unwholesome roots. Unwholesome roots is referring to kushala or akushala. So akushala means not wholesome, kushala means wholesome. Unwholesome roots produce unwholesome results, wholesome roots produce wholesome results. So kushala or akushala karma is the intentionality behind your actions. So this becomes really important. Interesting, the sort of psychological, emotional quality associated with greed is a kind of restlessness and grasping, attaching sensibility, like this insatiable thirst. In the Western, greed, Western comes from hunger. Its etymology is hunger, but it's always being hungry, never being satisfied. In the Sanskrit, it's thirst, but it's the same thirst or hunger. These are very primal longings, but neither are satisfied. So greed is said to have these objects of its desires, but never satisfied. This is what makes it an intense, irrational, selfish desire, as opposed to, I need to eat because I'm hungry, or I need to drink because I'm thirsty. It doesn't matter how many times you do this. In fact, it becomes worse with repetition. So the more you get, the more you want, and the less satisfied you are. This is the nature of greed. The second one, and usually the objects are what? What are the objects? It's a standard list as well. I get a chance to sip. What are the objects of desire? Huh? Wealth? Sex? Food? Think Facebook. Attention, fame, wanting to be noticed, right? And then sleep. Food, fame, wealth, sex, and sleep are considered the 5 desires. Now, some of you are wondering, I understand food, and it's not just food to fill and be satisfied. Like the monks recite every day, I take this food only to cultivate the way, I take it as medicine, basically. It's like, can't get enough. You're foodie on overdrive. Food, fame, wealth, why sleep, huh? So somebody, what's sleep got to do? And I have a hard time myself identifying with this because I never had an inordinate intense desire for sleep, except when I was really tired. But I noticed that some people do. It's an almost, yeah. I mean, my mother would force me to take naps, and boy, I'd resist. I'd actually kick the screen on and slide out the window from taking my nap. I hated to take naps and rest. So I never, and even like in meditation practice, sleep never really bothered me at all. But I could see for some people, especially when they start to meditate, within a few minutes of meditation, I'm like, what's going on? Well, it's a kind of desire. It's when you cultivate. Let me put it this way. These desires are very, I say plastic. I don't mean cheap plastic, I mean malleable. So you go to a retreat and you say, aha, I am going to control my thing for food here. I just go out all the time and eat up anything I want. My refrigerator is overstuffed. I'm going to reduce my down to need rather than greed. And you do. But then the desire for fame rises instead. So that you push one down and the other one comes up. But you get food and fame down, then sexual desire swamps. You get those 3 down, and then you want to be attended to. You want to have attention, you want to be famous, and then sleep. So often they're like this hydra, the Greek mythology, you cut off one and then these others come out in profusion. So those of you who have been retreats know what I'm talking about. Those of you who have tried to cultivate know that when you put down one, it sort of, it has a plasticity, it just like a water balloon, you squeeze one in and it bulges in the other. So getting a handle on all 5. Anyhow, sleep is one of them. Okay, anger. Pratiga in Sanskrit. This is very interesting. It's a hostile attitude towards beings. And it often isn't just situational. Something comes up. It often can be an underlying temperament almost. We say someone is triggers, cocked. They're always, you feel it. Somebody's right on the edge of losing their temper. Very, very, and it comes, it's associated with frustration. And frustration, it gives rise when there's defeated desire. So this is very interesting. Desire is defeated, blocked, inhibited, obstructed, then give rise to anger. Can't. It's not the only source. It also has different ways of representing it because it's the other side of attachment. So greed is the wanting, the grabbing. The other side of attachment is the pushing away. So often the anger is the first sign of the repulsion, animosity, irritation, indignation. These are all the qualities associated with anger. So they don't have to be you just lose your temper. It could be something as simple as you're irritated. You're irritated all the time. Or there's a kind of constant frustration or an indignation towards somebody. Ill will, just generally not wishing people well. All of this goes under the pratiga. And it can be aimed, and this is very interesting psychological, it can be aimed at another person. However, it can also um, be aimed at oneself. Anger at your own suffering. Why I'm angry that this is happening to me. This is not fair, blah, blah, blah. And also a sense of, and maybe I did it, but then you're angry with yourself. So this can become a very interesting affliction. And anger or towards situations. So it can be anger at somebody else, towards yourself, or a situation, not necessarily a person. And then it leads to this impatience with the objects of whatever that anger is directed at. Wishing to get rid of them. You know, ever that wish? Or striking out against them, or even harming them. So this is very interesting because anger can start as just something that's simple, mild irritation, and go to full-blown rage and violence, and actually killing and harming. So it's along a spectrum. And then when you're dealing with this, one of the things that precepts do is try to keep it from actually going to full-blown killing. So the precept then allows you to step back and face it at the maximum of profound irritation and will and whatnot. What's also interesting about this is that anger and aggression are correlated. So aggression is the expression of the anger, underlying anger. But it can be displaced. I don't know if you've ever heard this term, displaced anger, displaced aggression. Some people know what I'm talking about. What is it? Yeah, you were shaking your head. If you're angry at who? Yeah. They know it, but they can't. The displacement means it's either unsafe or unacceptable to express it towards the object that's irritating you. So you've got it, and you know you got it, but you can't express it. Maybe it's a figure in authority you can't express it to. Or it's a relationship, and you can't express that relationship, or it's a difference in power, and therefore you are held down and checked it. So that builds, and it gets then displaced or redirected to something that is less the object. You know, you're really angry at somebody, so you kick the dog, right? Or you punish an animal, or you kick the door, you take it out on the furniture. All these kinds of actions, behind them is actual an object of a person usually you're trying to get at, but you can't express it either unacceptable or unsafe. And so displaced anger and aggression, a lot of what we're doing is actually displaced. A lot of what we're doing is displaced. The third one, ignorance. This is avidya, literally not seen. Avidya, not seen clearly. It could be sometimes translated as unseen rather than ignorance. And it's the first of the 12 links. So this is the first one of the 12 links. And it's actually symbolized by a person who is blind or wearing a blindfold. Very interesting. So in the early graphics of this, it was someone wearing a blindfold. So wearing the blindfold is a willful not seen. Being blind is not necessarily willful, but it's also not seen. And basically, it's misunderstanding the nature of reality, specifically who I am or what I am, the Atma, Atha, the self. And basically thinking that that's a real, substantial, unchanging, permanent entity, and not accepting that it is one of the things that is majorly in flux and doesn't have any substantial, unchanging reality to it. So that's why the breaking of this particular ignorance is the understanding of emptiness. So the fundamental sunyata is the one, it's like the sun that melts the ice of the Atha, the Atman, the self, and brings it down to its reality. Anyhow, um, it includes an ignorance sort of out of darkness, but also obscuration, misconception. So obscuration is a willfully bending of reality. You know you're doing it, but you convince yourself that you're not. Um, and then it's represented by what are called four inversions. The first one is mistaking illusion for reality, what is unreal to be real, what is impermanent to be permanent, you think it is, what you think is bliss is actually suffering, and then what you take to be self is actually not self. Yeah. Sometimes the metaphor that's used is like a cataract in the eye, so that you are seeing, but you're seeing through a cloud. You're seeing through an obscuration. Um, and it's greatest impurity in the sense of the greatest of afflictions, because this is the root of all other afflictions. And it's also the primary cause of suffering and then continual rebirth. And that's why the insight into emptiness, which is where, if you know the Heart Sutra, Avalokiteshvara is cultivating the profound perfection of wisdom. Zhao Jian illuminated and saw the fundamental emptiness of phenomena, of the five skandhas, and as a result, was free of suffering and difficulty. So this is the mention of the understanding the emptiness, the inherent lack of a nature and phenomena cuts through this and is the antidote. Okay, I could go on. That's 3. Is that a good start? Help parse it out a little bit. And fortunately, none of these apply to us, so I don't know why I spent so much time. But next week, I will continue with the other 3, because I want to get to some of the text tonight. The key line for me is this, the Vedan, Iduan, Nung Rulai, Laifa, not merely by means of much learning may one enter the thus come one's Dharma. This character, Ru, which means to enter, has literally means to enter, but it also means to go in, to join with. It can be like admitted to, confirm. It has all these. Agree with, mesh with. So it's a general word depending on the context. It's used here literally to enter. But you could say the Buddha Dharma cannot be fully grasped through scholarship only. Or you only have to say only, fully grasped through scholarship. Grasping is the entry. You cannot enter the thus come one's Dharma merely through learning. There's different ways to render this. And the key one there is the dual one, many, dual, many, much learning. But for me, the key is the lines Thedan, not only. You see that? The Thedan. And then Iru Sure. Again, only like this, or also is like this. Those are the key ones. So here, it doesn't say one cannot enter the thus come one's Dharma through learning. I want to be careful about this. It says only or merely through learning. So it leaves open the question, it's not an either or. Kind of dichotomy. Or as people render it, learning and practice, study and practice, study and contemplation. These are the dichotomies. Books and meditation, that's another one that's used. And I hear this quite a bit. I don't want to study, I just want to cultivate. We're not interested in study, we're interested in cultivation. And sometimes people then misquote this section of text to show that the Avatamsaka supports. I don't think that's what the text is saying. I think the merely or only here is absolutely critical in the translation. And say it's basically saying it's not either or, but both and. both and. The key line, where does that appear here? Go back to the Chinese. See the next one? As a person floating on water, who for fear of drowning dies of thirst, so is one who does not practice the Dharma, but only amasses much learning. So here you have Yufa Bu Xiaoxing. Aha. So this is a balancing thing. It's not saying that study, much study even, is the problem, is that it's not done with Xiaoxing. So you have to have Duowan and Xiaoxing together. This is the key. And as soon as you create that dichotomy, you're out on a dangerous limb, especially in a time when we don't have truly Shanzhizhi's, how you put it, a Kalyana Mitra, wise and knowing advisors to correct our course. It becomes absolutely essential then to have Duowan. Now, Duowan is referring to knowledge of the sutra text, the Shastras, and the Vinaya. It's not referring to worldly knowledge per se, although that can complement this. But it's also extremely important to Xiaoxing, to actually walk it. And that's what the characters here indicate, correcting one's steps. Xiaoxing, correcting, cultivating, correcting one's steps. So Duowan and Xiaoxing have to be conjoined. And I'll give you some examples, because this turns out to be a recurring debate argument within these teachings. It was at the time of the Buddha, and has continued on in all the countries and cultures it's gone through, even today in the United States. The dichotomy of study and practice, of books and meditation, continues to muddy up the waters of people's practice. And actually, I'll give you two examples, if time permitting. One is the Pandita model. Have you heard of Pandita? P-A-N, not pundit. I know you would think, no, it's Pandita. Pandita is Sanskrit. Basically, huh? To what? What does pandit mean? Oh, but not pedantic. Careful. Not pedant. Yeah. No. Pedant, yeah, is a phony learner. It's pedantic. It's someone who is constantly snooty, looking down and quoting things, but of no. That's pedantic. It's like sophistry. Pandit is not the same. Pandit is a Sanskrit word. It's a title actually given to scholar practitioners of the ancient past. And this was one of the sort of magna cum laude graduate from Nalanda University at the time, was considered the Pandit. Basically, it's a learned person and very well versed. And then in a text by a Sangha, he quotes this, he says, without becoming a scholar in the 5 sciences, not even the supreme sage can be omniscient. For the sake of refuting and supporting others, and for the sake of knowing everything himself or herself, she makes an effort in these 5 sciences. So then what this meant was a Pandit was someone who was accomplished in the 5 sciences of the time. Basically, I think, as I look at it, a turbocharged BA program. It wasn't just our bachelors of liberal arts, but if you listen to what they were doing, now that traditional breadth of learning was covered in the Euro-American idea of a liberal arts degree, a Bachelor of Arts. But the ancient Eastern version called the Panchavidya, 5 Panchavidya, vidya, seeing, again, knowledge, not ignorance, of the 5, had to do with these 5 sciences. Let me just mention what they were. Science of language, grammar, composition, and literature. That's the first one. So you'd had to know how to read and write at a fairly sophisticated level. Then the science of logic and reasoning. So here we have philosophical logic and reasoning. Then the science of medicine. So medicine was considered one of the 5 elements of that liberal arts degree. Then mathematics, fine arts and crafts, and finally the science of inner knowledge, which was considered spirituality. These were the 5 areas that one had to master. And then you were a pandit, and they were very valued and prized. Xuanzang got this category. That's why he won the elephant in the debate. That's how esteemed this learning was. But you'll notice the last one had to do with inner knowledge and spirituality. They had to be masters of that. I don't see that in the liberal arts programs most places now. What a world it would be if indeed everybody who got a degree from a prestigious university or college also had excellence in spirituality. Oh, wow, dream on, huh? Anyhow, historical examples of this are very interesting. Some of you know the famous monk Heng Sure. We tell a story about Heng Sure. He was a transitional monk between Central Asia and China, bringing text in and translation. He was the one who was killed, and he told the courts in advance. He knew he was going to be killed because his karma wasn't paid off. He told the courts in advance, don't persecute the person that killed me. I have a debt to pay off. This happened twice. And it's like, anyhow, another story. Nagarjuna, a pandit. Lakshmana, Gunabhadra, Kumarajiva. I'm just mentioning some of the famous ones. Bodaruchi, Xuanzang himself was considered a pandit. I could go on. The one that we're working on now is Anshan De Ching, very learned. Chengguang, National Master Qingliang Gosher, all had mastered these various areas in their culture for their time and were able to bring the Dharma alive in that way. So that's the Pandit. And partly, I think what Master Hua had in mind in wanting and at each point requiring people that ordained under him to become monks and nuns to have the minimum of a Bachelor of Arts degree. And I think he was drawing off this model, that this is a model that was not only effective and relevant in ancient India, but perhaps even more so in the modern world. If we're going to have Dharma intersect in the ways of people thinking and how they set up with all the institutional economics, and you got to have that language and able to make a bridge. In any event, so I'm doing a contrast now. So you have the Pandit, and then you have Sudapantaka. Who's Sudapantaka? Sudapantaka has a blog. It's really hot right now. Actually, you could start a blog called Sudapantaka. That would be cool. Sudapantaka his name means sweet clean. Oh, sweet clean, you think, right? No? You don't know the story? Okay. So I'm going to read to you a transcription of the story that Master Hua told it back then to us. You'll see sort of his tone and the delight at which he tells these stories. He says, so Sudapantaka and Mahapantaka were brothers. Sudapantaka's name means little roadside. And his big brother means big roadside, okay? In India, it was a custom for women about to give birth to return to their parents' home. But Mahapantaka's mother didn't want to go home. Who knows why? Gee, really? In ancient times and present. And so she waited until the last minute to leave. Consequently, her son was born on the side of the road. So when the time came to give birth to the second son, she thought, should have known better, but again, this is Master Hua reading, she waited again. Home must have been really messy. It happened again, and the second child was called Little Roadside. So number one, big roadside, number two is little roadside. Although born in similar circumstances, the two brothers were very different in nature. The older brother was remarkably intelligent, but the younger brother was remarkably stupid. I'm quoting Master Hua's story. He was so stupid he couldn't remember even a half a line of verse. Now the Buddha, Master Hua was going on, had instructed the 500 arhats to teach him a verse, and they took turns by day and night trying to teach him. So this is a verse given by Shakyamuni Buddha to the Arhats, and it goes like this. Now I'm going to say it once and then see if anybody remembers it. I can't. My brother will. Okay, here's the verse. This was given to the Arhats. Guard your mouth, unite your mind. With your body, don't offend. Don't annoy a single living being. And stay away from non-beneficial, bitter practices. Conduct like this can surely save the world. Okay. So for many days, this was a verse, the 500 Arhats combined their great spiritual powers trying to teach Little Roadside this verse. They taught him over and over and over and over, and he kept forgetting it. They would say, recite this verse. He'd say, I can't remember, he would answer. Finally, his brother, Big Roadside, scolded him. You're good for nothing, he said. You can't leave home, you're useless, and he chased him away from the monastery and from the Sangha. Okay? Now, Master was going on telling us, he says, Little Roadside may not have had much of a memory, but he certainly had a temper. And if you won't leave home, he shouted, I'll show you I'll kill myself. And so he grabbed a rope and ran to the backyard and climbed a tree ready to hang himself. At that moment, Shakyamuni Buddha transformed himself into a tree spirit and explained the Dharma to him. Your brother is your brother, he said, and you are you. He says you can't leave home, but you don't have to listen to him. You can cultivate right here. Why would you kill yourself? It's such a precious thing, your life. And he sniffed and thought, that makes sense. He's he and I'm me. He has no right to tell me I can't leave home. Okay? Right, said Shakyamuni Buddha. Since you can't remember half a line, I'll give you 2 words. Sweep clean. Remember these 2 words and use them to sweep your heart clean. Sweep the floor, sweep the walkways, and sweep your heart free of dust. And Little Roadside, little Sudipanaka says, yes, I will sweep my heart. Sweep what? And the Buddha said, clean. Oh yeah, sweep, clean, what was it? Sweep. And after a little practice, he nailed sweep, clean, sweep, clean. Clean, what was that first word again? Sweep. And the Buddha was very patient, he smiled. And Little Roadside said, sweep, clean, sweep, clean. And he recited it and swept, remembering the Buddha's instruction to sweep the walkways, but also sweep his heart clean. And one day he realized that there was not only dust on the floor, but when the sun was shining, he saw dust everywhere normally you couldn't see. And he asked himself whether there's dust in his mind that he can't see as well. And thus, with that contemplation, he attained an awakening, a very profound awakening. In less than a week, Master Was said, all of a sudden he was awakened and understood everything very clearly, penetrated the real mark, Shirshan, of all dharmas, and was even more now intelligent than his big brother. And so Master Wa did, I remember at the time, he said, so the Buddha invited him to give a talk, and big brother was like, you can't invite him to talk, he's just a stupid little brother, and he's gonna embarrass me and my family too, but he gave a talk, and then everybody was like, whoa, wow, this guy's got it. So Master Wa's closure on this, I'll share with you tonight, he says, Little Roadside wasn't like us. We recite Namo Amitofo every day, but the more we recite, the more false thinking we have. If stupid people work hard and cultivate, they can also become enlightened. Don't say, I'm too stupid to understand the sutras. Remember the laxity we mentioned last time about selling yourself short? That laxity is the laxity here. If you don't understand them, don't read them, it will suffice to contemplate your heart. And for when you have seen it clearly, you will be enlightened. How should you contemplate your own heart? Watch for your false thinking and sweep it out of your heart. Then you can become awakened. Sweep clean, sweep clean. So, Master concludes, a Little Roadside, stupid as he was, became awakened. We are all much more intelligent than him. And could no doubt remember sweep clean hearing it once. Right? Everybody's got it? So don't cheat yourself and take yourself lightly. Go forward bravely and study the Dharma. Then he's got this very closing. He would also do this at the end of one of his talks. He said, were I to speak the most wonderful Dharma, unless you believed it, it would be of no use to you. But were I to speak utter nonsense, should you actually practice, it would be wonderful Dharma. If you don't practice a wonderful Dharma, it's not wonderful for you. You must always make vigorous progress. Don't fall behind and get lazy. Now we're back to the laxness thing. This is the most important, for if you can always make progress, a day will certainly come when you'll be able to recognize your original face. This is the end of his talk he gave on Sutta-Pantika, but you see the wonderful, it brings in this is a story from the tradition. It appears in a number of texts, the Pali text, but also the spin on it applying to us, almost saying here, maybe you're even more intelligent than big roadside, but don't let that become an obstacle. So the combination of the study with the sweeping clean is the absolute essential to make this chemistry work. I will finish with one, and then I'm going to go. This will be for next week, because I want to get into this a little more with Han Shan De Ching. He was torn his whole life between study and practice, trying to reconcile these two, and it wasn't easy for him. And it wasn't until later in his life that he actually brought the two of them together. But this one I want to give you here, because sometimes doubt in the afflictions is an obstacle, but sometimes it's a savior, depending on what you're doubting. Now, the doubt that's referred to in the klesha is doubt about the teachings, doubt about the teacher, and doubt about yourself. But there's also a doubt about what is not the teachings, what is not a teacher, and what is not yourself. And having doubt about that is actually healthy, if you follow where I'm going here. So Han Shan had doubts because his mother at an early age insisted that he study hard. I just heard a thing on public radio today from reports from Asia on education and the high rate of depression and suicide among Asian children who are pressured into study to pass the exams and move up the social and economic ladder. And they said even though it doesn't apply necessarily in America for Asian students, they still have the ghost of this underneath their skin, pushing them all the time. This anxiety of passing exams and getting into prestigious schools and so forth. So this is a continuing, going back to Han Shan, his mother was pushing him in this way. And Han Shan doubted the validity of this. And so here's a conversation. I'll just share it with you tonight and then we'll close. Han Shan says, Mom, what's the use of studying? And his mother says, to become a government official. And then Han Shan says, what rank of official? The mother says, you start from a low government official, you can work your way up, and if you have ability, you can reach as high as a prime minister. This is from his biography. Then Han Shan says, and what's after becoming a prime minister? The mother says, the point is, that's the point, retirement. And Han Shan says, I mean, he's like 7 or 8 years old now. It's a pity to stop there after a lifetime of hard work. So what's so good about it? I would rather do something that does not stop, does not end. And the mother said, for someone as lacking in talent as you, you can be nothing but a wandering monk. And Han Shan says, what's a wandering monk? And what is good about being one? And his mother says, a monk is a disciple of the Buddha, traveling all over the world. He is free and at ease, and he is fed and served everywhere. And Han Shan says, that suits me just fine. That sounds right for me. And mother says, I'm afraid you won't be so fortunate. And Han Shan says, well, what does fortune have to do with it? And the mother says, there have been many Zhuangyan, which are the highest ranking candidates of the National Civil Service exam. They usually get plum postings in the capital. He says, there's been many of those, but very few who, having renounced the world, have become Buddhas or patriarchs. And what does Han-chan say? I'm such a fortunate one, but I'm afraid you will not permit me to leave. And the mother says, if you have this kind of good fortune, I can part with you, but keep this between us. Don't tell your father. This is a wonderful, I mean, we're back into the Ming Dynasty of this encounter. You could see it happening. You couldn't see it happen. This is a very exceptional child to have that kind of conversation with his mother. But you can see, and this tension with his mother regarding this issue continued until he was into his late 50s, early 60s, when they finally were able to reconcile this tension. So going to school is not easy, and leaving home is not easy either. So I will, I'll stop here for tonight. I will continue next week. There's no Black Friday next week. Okay? If you do Black Friday, do it before 7 o'clock and get back here, okay? Because Black Friday means you're going to take on a load of afflictions and think you got a bargain, okay? So come here after your Black Friday, whatever you do, and sweep clean. And we'll do a class on next Friday night. And here I want to go into Han-chan some more about his life and his struggles with this, because it's very telling, it's very interesting. And some more examples from my own experience with Master Hua. So we will return to this next week. Ken, any announcements besides the one I just gave? She's the one that asked me. She said, are we going to do Black Friday? Now, I don't, were you asking because you didn't want to do it or you did want to do it? We have what? Announcements. Oh. I can see you very clearly. Okay. Oh, when the last day of class is going to be for the semester. Okay, so the question is, will I be finished chapter 10 before the end of this semester? Well, then let me quote the Tao Te Ching. That which is most perfect is not finished. Huh. That excuses my retarded slowness here. A box of persimmons. Oh. Are persimmons the one you squeeze the juices out of? Oh, those. Yeah. What everything, each Shirkaya, and everything's a test to see what you will do. Guess what my weakness is? So you guys better get to them first. Okay, let's do the transference in English. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Bow in respect to the triple jewel.